Hello and welcome to Out of State DMing. I'm your host, lluksblackheart. Today we'll be doing a recap over the last bundle of episodes I did and what's going to be coming in the future episodes. Gotta love recaps and future stuff. To recap, we did go over skills, all of the skills, not expanded skills or the exact homebrew skill stuff, because there is expanded skills which we'll cover in later future stuff. There's also homebrew stuff which you can find out there. When it comes to homebrew, don't throw at your DM. Let your DM throw it at you. But we did cover a bunch of the do's and don'ts with skills, such as just because you rolled a nat 1, don't assume you failed, because that's not a failure. If you roll a nat 20, don't assume you succeed, because that's not an auto-succeed. Now, if you want to start an argument over things, there is DM prerogative sprinkled in with house rules. So if you run across a table where nat 1s on skills are auto fails and nat 20s on skills are auto successes, that's that group. If you're worried about synergy bonuses, just look up your synergy. Like we covered in each one, it tells you what how many ranks you have to have in what skill to get the bonus, and whether or not that's a passive constant bonus or a circumstance bonus. Like use rope only really helps synergy bonuses if you're using ropes when it comes to other skills. The next cast of episodes will be involving. You hear no audio? Well, apparently I'm having audio problems. Can you hear me now, almighty lavender of the dust? Or dusk? I have a simple way to help me see if I'm fixing this. So don't mind this, because everything's supposed to be working fine. But sometimes technology does not want to work. Does not want to work. So, oh, I see what it's doing there. 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 I started a loop. Uh, I hate it when that happens. But hey, at least my audio's not messing up on me. But I said starting next week, I'm going to be diving into feats, which will cover prerequisites, what the benefits are. Some feats are going to sound amazing, but then you're gonna go, because they can be mid. But that is my overall game plan, to help you guys out with possible feat selections. There is different things feats can be categorized as, which I'll be going over next episode, because I'm going to be covering the ground bases of feats. After that, we will most likely be getting into equipment, uh, and then leeching over to possibly spells, because I know there is a few people actually are looking forward to the entire spells period, because they're like jumping for joy to be involved in it. Those people. I just realized I gotta fix something. Haha, my title was incorrect. Because apparently I can't remember to do things. Sometimes I hate my memory. But no, back in point. But yeah, we are slowly getting through the player's handbook. Uh, yeah, in the past we did races, we did classes, we just got done with skills. So we're getting there. Like I said, we got equipment and spells next. We may or may not go into have future episodes involving religions. Uh, I know there's some people are touchy about their religions, especially when we get into some of the conspiracy theories for some of the gods. Because yes, there is conspiracy theories. There is uh, canon and non-canon information on them. There's even some information that people will try to argue with you with, but then if you go look at the dogma of some of them, you're like, yeah, didn't know that there's this stuff here. Uh, Man, I forgot how short these recaps and future episodes can be. They're easy to do, but so short, and there's so much I want to talk about. Um, ooh, I will when I'm done with the player's handbook, going over a bunch of the stuff there. Um, I may or may not be going into some of the the bonus skills, and probably talking about some of the bonus feats, because there are some bonus skills out there that can help players out, especially if the DM's trying to go a certain route or wants certain things to be fixed. But then there's also multiple feats that also help with that stuff there, that come from multiple different sources. Uh, a big thing to remember with anything a DM decides to bring to the table, while it be skills, feats, spells, equipment, magical equipment, classes, or races. If he doesn't have his sources cited, it's either because it's 100% homebrew, which can be tricky, or he just didn't care to put it down or forgot to put it down. Uh, if you're trying to use skills from outside of the core book, there are several steps you need to take before you utilize those skills. Step one: verify with the DM if it's actually okay if you use those skills. Step two: make sure you actually are using the skills correctly, because there's some skills that sound like they should work. Like there's one skill that helps with shape changing, but that's only if you are fall under a certain prelude. It doesn't help with the actual spell shape change or any of those things there. It's a very specific thing there that in past games some people went, I want to do this because it helps with this. It's like you don't meet any of the criteria for that skill to be usable because it's primarily used by werewolves and such lycanthropy. So just make sure you're using the skill right. Make sure the DM approves of the skill, because one of the most irritating things you can do to a DM is pop up with a skill that makes him have to stop the game, verify what book this comes out of, verify what this skill is supposed to be actually used for, because that stops the game. It causes arguments. It causes fights. I've seen it happen because it's happened to me. Running a game, players start using skills like, wait, that's not in the. Where'd you get that skill? And then it's a hassle because if you don't properly record down where the skill comes from, it takes a arm and a leg to get that information. For example, I had a player who loved not telling anyone where he got his material from, so he'll pop up with skills and it's like, wait, where's that from? And he wouldn't have it write down, and he never remembered what book it came out of. So it would be a half hour to an hour long search of what book is it in, just for it to be a book that I already said, no, I'm not using anything out of that book, or to go, I'm not wasting any more time. You can't use that skill until I can verify it, and I'm not going to stop game any longer to verify a skill because you decided to go off script and use a skill that no one's familiar with. So please don't be that guy. Cite your sources. Okay it with the DM. Because again, that it circumvents, it avoids, it helps and solves so many problems in advance. Because again, you're not holding up game, you're not stopping game. Another thing that you have to remember is if a DM decides to let something pass, it does not mean stop the game to correct the DM. Because there is such thing as rules lawyers that especially when it comes to like such thing as skills, that will stop and go, hey, that skill's not being used correctly because it's not. This is supposed to be used for that. The DCs are supposed to be at minimum this. It's supposed to be that. It's supposed to be this. It's like, if you're going to have a problem with a DM running skills, like for instance, I hate use magical advice because it requires multiple rolls for you to use the magical item. It's not just one roll or compounding these bonuses to the DC if you don't master a thing. It's multiple rolls, like we went over in the past episode, where you have to roll to make sure you can emulate the ability to cast spells of that particular type, the ability score if you didn't have it, the level for it, like all these different things, and it costs one. All it takes is one failure, and you can't use it. So it's like it's overly complicated, it's overly diluted, and I have gotten the bad habit of just slightly increasing DCs for it, or just having them roll, and if it's high enough, I just let it slide without having to make multiple rolls. Have I had the problem of people trying to say, hey, you're supposed to do this, that, this, and that? It's like, no, I'm simplifying it because I don't want to spend the next like 10 to 15 minutes trying to figure out if something worked or not just to do progress. So if you notice a DM is lowering DCs or lowering the amount of checks needed, don't fight your DM. Because it's either A, lack of experience, or B, he's making the game more streamlined. Streamline makes the game funner, and it makes a lot of things just go by quicker. And that can be said about stuff with races and classes. If a DM's letting stuff slide, don't disrupt the game. Wait till after game, discuss it with him, go over everything with him, because nothing's more annoying for an entire group of people than one person deciding that they need to be right because they saw something that was wrong. This DM prerogative does exist, and I have gotten petty in the past, and despite going, okay, they're technically right because I am shortchanging these things here, to, oh, because you're disrupting the game. I'm just going, no, DM's prerogative. This is happening like this. I'll correct it in future game sessions, but right now, because of this stuff here, no, it's happening like this. And just give them the big old birdie. Does the point of skills are to pretty much not necessarily set limitations on what your character can and cannot do, but just how well you can actually do them. And the thing you have to remember is your character isn't a run-of-the-mill person. Even if you have run-of-the-mill stats, you're the most common race, you're the most picked class, you're not a run-of-the-mill individual. So while you may think that some of these DCs are ridiculous, there's going to become a point where a first level character and or just a commoner looks at you jumping from rooftop to rooftop and goes, that's amazing, because the DCs for jumping are quite ridiculous, and if you don't have a high enough or good enough jump, you're not making it. There's multiple enemies that will be chasing you. There's a 5-foot tall spiked wall right there. You can jump over the wall, but the thing is, it's not oh, you rolled a 5, you pass it. No, it's like a DC 22 that you have to contend with to jump that wall. And I'm not kidding. This is 4 times height plus 2 for a running high jump, because you're not running long, you're trying to run and jump over something, so you have to get quite high to jump it. There's a very good chance that NPCs aren't going to even attempt that, because they're going to see you jump over that and go, dear mother of heavens, the fudge, because you cleared it. For example, in one of the games I ran, several of the party members had to make that exact jump, and they technically made it, but they took damage in the process, because they kind of just hit their calves hit the wall, because they didn't make exact clearance. They just got high enough to have it hit, and they kind of just stumbled on their side of the wall. But the enemies didn't jump the wall, because the enemies are okay, they're wearing armor, they have shields, they're getting a +1 or a +2, so they're not making that jump at all. So the party, even though the party got injured, the party was able to actually safely get away, simply because the bad guys aren't making that jump. And they're not necessarily super weak or super low level enemies or anything like that. They didn't have the skill capacity to do it, because they're not that skilled in it. So the sheer fact that people are able to make those jumps is amazing, because the run-of-the-mill soldier or the run-of-the-mill person can't do the things your characters can. There's going to be points where they just stop. There's even town guards that are Billy bad, awesome, normally don't make it past level 10, because they're not adventuring, they're stagnant there, and that's not even a super common thing. That has to be a really high populated city to have actually NPCs of that caliber. And even them, they're not going to have ridiculous skill modifiers. They're not going to have the spot and listen to technically contend with equal level party members. They may be good, they may have a lot of stuff, but they don't get what you get. And it's not even having to wait till your epic level or anything for your skills to feel like you're amazing. You can get it relatively early on. And it all comes to how you do it. Does not counting feats racial bonuses, synergy bonuses, or any just counting roll skills, you can have 4 points in it. That there is really good because it sets just how high you have to roll. Just do it. Like, for instance, let's just use that 22 jump. A +4, you can still make that jump with a +4. Are you going to possibly fail because it's a 4? Yeah. But once you take into account that it's a physical thing, most armor people wearing at that thing, they're only probably going to have a -2 or a -3, so that drops the 4 to a 1. But then you have to count in strength, which is probably going to be a 3, so it's now back up to 4. They probably took a feat that gives them a +2, so they have a +6. So at level 1, you can make that jump. The likelihood of succeeding may not be very high, but the DC is a 22. You can beat a 22 with a +6. And that's at level 1. The party members at that point weren't over specialized in jump, but they also were level 5. So their potential was pretty high because they could have had at least 8 ranks in it. Both of them had it. Well, one had a +4 because they had a really high strength. So if they would have mid-maxed it, they would have had an 8. They were wearing leather armor, which is like a -1, so back down to not. Well, yeah, 8 +4 minus. Yeah, it's a brain not wanting to brain. So it's a +11. They could have taken a feat to make it a 13, and so at level 5, a DC 22 isn't that high because you get a 22 by rolling a 9 or higher. So right there, the odds are actually in their favor. And that jump is not something a lot of other creatures are going to try to do unless they're really specialized in jumping. For instance, there is a fish that they give statistics, the barracuda. Yes, the barracuda has a +30 to their jump checks because they want them to leap out of the water to attack things. Yes, I know D&D doesn't make sense at times, but the fact that it's like, here's a +30 to their jump check, that means it's the likelihood of that particular creature failing a jump check is practically nil unless it's a ridiculous jump they're trying to make. And there is other modifiers to take into your jump check. For instance, if you're a barbarian, you get a +10 to your base land speed. That +10 immediately works out to giving you +4 on all your jump checks. Which means a level 5, if they were barbarian, level 5, they're 13 just because their space speed becomes a 17. So likelihood of failure is highly unlikely. And that's at level 5. So there is going to become points where you may not think DCs are fair, where you think they're too high, or you just don't feel confident in your own abilities. Remember one key thing. There's going to be a point where the DCs you thought were impossible are I can't fail these checks at all. And like I said, just by being a 5th level barbarian, you can have a 17 in jump check. Well, in your jump at level 5. That's high. That's good. That's amazing. That's easily like Olympic scale stuff. Because if you go look up on how high some of the hurdles they have to jump over while they're doing the run, most of the time those aren't near 5 feet. I think like the highest one's like around 4 feet. I may be wrong in that, but still like around 4 feet. That's pretty freaking high. I think like the high point, which would be a DC 18 in D&D, which is better than a 22. So even at level 1, being like a first level barbarian, because you get the speed boost immediately. Putting 4 ranks into it, +4 from your run, -1 from your armor makes it a 7. Counting in the strength, which is most likely going to be a 16, you have a +10. An 18 doesn't seem very high with a +10. Because again, you don't have to get super high to beat that. And my cat is making noises at birds outside. Don't know if you can hear her because she's being quietly adorable. But yeah, it's like right there. So like in D&D terms, how you don't even have to be a barbarian. You can be like any physical based class that gets jump. To be an Olympic based person, you don't have to be ultra high level. You don't have to be ridiculously boom. You just have to put the right things in the right spots, and you can coast on them for a while. It's just once you get to a certain level, certain things just become mere child's play, because a level 10, like a level 10 monk will have at least like a +20 to their base speed by that point, at least, because monks, as they get higher level, they go faster. So like his jump checks, while as long as he counts as a running jump check, will get a +8 just from his speed. And because he's level 10, he can put like at least 13 points into it, so he's getting a 21, not counting strength, not counting feats, not counting any other modifiers, just because he's super fast and has a max ranks into it, which makes that 5-foot spiked wall look like child's play, because the minimum he's getting is a 22. So he can hurdle over that like it's no problem at the absolute minimum. And if you want to try to better gauge on the skill level of your character when it comes to anything, take your total skill modifier, add 10 to it. Because 10 is the average roll on a d20. So if you're trying to look for like how your average is going to be, not your lowest, not your highest, your average, add 10 to it. That right there will tell you just how skilled you are. It's like swimming. Swimming can hard. It can take a lot of energy out of you. It can take a lot of work. That's why it counts as a exercise, and why a lot of the like Olympic swimmers and stuff are technically quite physically healthy, because they're going against water. The typical swim check for calm water, like would be like in a swimming pool, would be a DC 10, which means unless you have modifiers, anyone can beat it. Stormy water. Hi, Saint. Stormy water is a DC 15. So even though like those DCs aren't necessarily super high or anything, swimming is important, because if you fail by 5 or more, you go under the water. So the average person that doesn't really have anything in swim can still beat a DC 10 and have a chance of beating a DC 15. They're not going to be uber skilled in it. And a thing you have to remember, you have to fail by 5 or more to go under the water. Failing the DC means you fail to make any progress that turn. That's all that means. So if you want to actually keep going forward, you have to keep beating the 10. And it doesn't matter if it's a move action equivalent or a full round equivalent, because that just sets your speed. You just have to keep beating that 10. So there's going to become a point where the only hindrance you have is going to be your armor, because armor penalties count twice for it. So there's certain armor that you're not going to want to swim with. Like a tower shield has an armor check penalty of -10, which when it comes to swimming becomes a -20. So therefore you can easily fail just about every swim check if you have a tower shield. And that's technically equipped. Key thing, while you're equipped. If you have it, if you're technically carrying it, and not having it equipped, the armor check penalty technically doesn't hit you, but weight restrictions does, because yes, for every, like, it's either 5 or 10. Yeah, there is a check penalty based on how much weight you're actually carrying. I normally don't apply it because sometimes players don't pay attention to how much weight they're actually carrying, and they end up carrying way too much, and I don't like... If I wanted my players to die, I prefer it being an epic way, not because they decided to carry a wagon through a swamp. But like, even with a tower shield, there's going to be a point where you're going to pass those checks. You're going to pass those DCs. You're going to look at it and go, huh, a run-of-the-mill Joe cannot do what I can do. And again, you don't have to be epic level to have that feeling. You can start relatively easy and have that feeling. Like, when it comes to rogues, you don't even have to specialize in specific things to be super good at stealth. Because a normal person spot and listen check, unless they have a lot of hit dice, like all these proper things, there's a chance that you're just going to be, like, really early on not getting seen or heard by things simply because they can't outdo your hide or your move silently. And if you have the right feat, there's a +2 to it. And if you're the right race, you end up having bonuses to it. Like halflings, because of their size, they get a +4 to hide checks. Which means a level 1 rogue, not counting dexterity, gets can have up to a +8 just off of being small size and that there. That's really good at level 1. Because it means anything to see him has to be able to contend with that number. That's not counting dexterity, which will most likely be a 3. If you count light armor, you're looking at around a 10. If they have the feat, it's a 12. So you can be level 1 with double digits immediately. Even though that technically qualifies as mid-maxing, it's still relatively easily, you're getting high numbers. And you don't have to be small size for it to be high numbers, because it's only +4 to hide checks. It doesn't help you move silently, but it's there. It still ends up overly working into just feeling great. It's rolling low that gets you with skills. That's the biggest catch-22, is rolling low. So if you have their trusted dice, you do everything correctly, then you're golden. You're set. It's going to be decent. It's going to be good. It's going to be fun. Don't overly stress things, though. You can overstress everything and end up not having fun, because sometimes failing a check can be hilarious. Excuse me. That being said, we are going to end the episode a little bit earlier than what I normally end my episodes at. But again, it's mainly just a recap. So thank you for watching. Thank you, chatters, for chatting. I will see you next week as we start to dive into skills. Dun dun dun. Thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe.